We are at Fort Buenaventura in Ogden, Utah. It is the site of the first permanent settlement, documented settlement in Utah. Miles Goodyear lived here and his wife Pomona. Their two children, William and Mary, also lived here. Others came and went, but Miles and Pomona built it and lived here for less than 2 years. Miles Goodyear trapped and traded all over the West. He was a historical figure in Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, and California. So he was all over, basically, traveling and trading. In approximately 1844, he decided that he wanted to go back to where the Ogden and the Weber River flowed together and build a trading post. And of course, he at that time still believed that trading was going to be lucrative. He came here to this site, Fort Buenaventura, and built the cabins in '45. Miles built the cabins believing that the fur trade would carry him through, which it had ended. And so he discovered that horses were going to be an excellent source of income. And as people were traveling from the east to the west, and there were thousands of people coming into the west by then, he built the cabins here next to a sand hill, which is over here. Miles climbed the hill and built fires on top of that hill to indicate to all of those people who were coming across the Rockies, which is to our east, that there was a settlement here, and he wanted people to come here and trade with him. And he had 4 cabins. This one has not been rebuilt. It was originally a vertical cabin. It had vertical logs. And it was used to house people who traveled through and needed shelter. This cabin here is where Miles and Pomona lived. They had a chimney, which is the only cabin with a chimney, so that they could cook and be warm in the winter. And inside the cabin, they have beds and blankets, and the items that would have been normal for Miles Goodyear to have had. The bed, as you can see, would have a little bit too much give in it, and so they would have a tool that they'd go down in here, twist it, twist it, twist it, and retie it. And that is how the saying, sleep tight, came about. Is sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. And why did the bed bugs bite? Because the mattresses were made of straw, and there were bed bugs in them, and so the bed bugs bit, and the springs weren't always tight. So sleep tight and don't let the bed bugs bite. This cabin is a reproduction of what existed in 1845. The original cabins collapsed, but there was one cabin that survived. It was taken off the premises sometime after 1850, used as a chicken coop, and then was later on donated to the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers, which is now sitting about 1.5 miles away from here, undercover. So it is being protected, and it was one of the original cabins. This cabin here was used primarily for saddles, bridles, all the tech that Miles would have needed for his horse herds. The people who were coming through here traded their lame animals for healthy animals, and he would nurse the lame ones back to health. So basically he would trade 2 lame horses for 1 healthy. Miles named it Fort Buenaventura, and it means good venture. He was, I'm sure, in hopes that it was going to be the best venture of his life, the trading post. And if you'd like to come inside, I've got some things I'd like to show you. This is a Betty lamp, and Betty lamps were used during this period of time as a source of light. The rich people had candles made out of beeswax, but a candle burns and it's gone. The Betty lamp has a wick, and inside this little container is fat from food, and you would light this wick and hang it from your ceiling. So this is what the poor people used for their lighting in their homes. The other thing that we could probably find some interest in is tea. And tea was, of course, considered money, and tea was traded. And this is how it came out of China. The East Indies Company brought it out of China, 15, 16, 1700s, into the British ports. The British port ships would then trade these tea bricks, and as you can see on the back, it's scored into 16 pieces. So the rich people would run down to the ships, buy a brick of tea, and frame it to prove their wealth. And then they would buy another brick of tea, and they would cut it into 16 pieces and sell a 1/16 of a brick to the poor people. Okay, this is solid tea, and so what you would do is, in order to have your tea, you would scrape it with a knife and boil and put it into your boiling water, and it is just exactly like tea today. So this is how it was transported out of China. This is what was thrown off the ships at the Boston Tea Party. It was bricks of tea, and they're very heavy. The other thing I want to show you is cards. These are historically correct playing cards. As you can see, there are no numbers and no letters on these cards. So people were killed in card games, and frequently, because if I had 3 kings and you had 3 kings, we didn't know who had the kings. And so people killed each other over their hand of cards. In about the 1870s, or maybe a little before that, when people could read and write, they started putting J, Ks, and Qs on the cards. And of course, the women were obvious. You could tell the women. You had a difficult time telling who was the king and who was the jack in any given deck. So many people were killed. As the cards became numbered and lettered, it became a family game where people could play cards without danger. I opened the store primarily because my interest in the fur trade had blossomed to the point where I wanted to give other people the opportunity to see what it would have been like to shop in 1840. So this would be the Walmart of the 1840s. In 1845, as I mentioned, Miles built the cabins, and in 47, the Mormons, the LDS Church, arrived in Salt Lake, which was about 30 miles to the south. And 30 miles away was an incredibly close neighbor. In the West, people didn't live that close, and the tradition was that you built your settlement and then you claimed all of the land around you. The Mormons came in with 124 people and all lived in a very close proximity. So Miles wasn't exactly happy about having that many neighbors and that close. And so he figured that he might be better off going off to California, which he'd been on numerous occasions with horse herds. And he decided that he would buy some land in California. So he contacted the LDS Church officials and offered Fort Buenaventura and everything you could see from every vantage point from this location for $1,900, and the Mormons bought it. He got interested in the gold mines in California and found that horse trading to the gold miners was very lucrative, and he did that. But he also did a little bit of gold mining himself, and he discovered Goodyear's Bar in California, still named Goodyear's Bar, and he got quite wealthy off of gold as well. Miles died in his early 30s in California, which was considered kind of a normal lifespan, and he died of what people assume was pneumonia. Well, I think he's important because he is our mountain man. He's the one who lived here, he's the one who loved the area, he's the one who built here. And because he developed the first permanent documented residence in what is now Utah. He is really our first resident. Other states have their mountain men, but Miles is ours.